Blitz is defined as a sudden, savage attack. It is indeed all this. The effect is sure. The premise is simple. It's a basic, primal confrontation, man to man. No excuses are offered. None accepted.
Welcome to the latest edition of Longhorn Blitz with Horns247.com.
Looks like a radio station.
Now, here are your hosts, lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers,
Pure athlete yet.
I transcend race, hombre.
Matt Butler,
I don't talk, man. I back it up.
And we are chock full of that.
Damn right.
and Jeff Howe.
It's still real to me, damn it. And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. If you're gonna blitz, come strong, but don't come at all.
One request for somebody that works in this studio daily, as Rod does. Sean Adams, do yourself a favor, sir. Please get your hearing checked because I'm concerned about you. Because when I come to use this
It is
microphone
turned up all
that
the
you
way?
use, it is turned up all the way.
Yeah.
That cannot be a healthy decibel level for one's ears. Sean, please, for the sake of your hearing long term, please go get that checked out.
Craig used to have that too. Craig would be up.
Sean's is loud.
Because you was sitting Craig's, yeah.
See, that's just, Craig's was turned like as loud as this thing could possibly go is how
Yeah.
loud. And Craig, look.
Just
I
a
love-
casualty of the
we love-
occupation.
Exactly. We love Craig. We respect the heck out of Craig. Craig's probably going to have hearing problems at some point in his life because of all the years of wearing headphones and having the stuff turned up loud.
Well, it's like the long-term repercussions of playing a sport or football. Like I will have issues because listen, like what do they say? Like 91 out of 97 brains they tested have CTE. And there's a good chance if you play football at elite level for at least 8 to 10 years, you probably will have some form of it somehow. Yeah, just repercussions of it and losing your hearing. He will I know Craig Way very well. He would gladly take being deaf at 85.
Right.
But so he can
Chalk it up to the game.
so he can continue to be basically a godfather of broadcasting, which he is. I mean, at this point, Craig Way has
He's an institution.
He has transcended now into, to a different stratosphere of broadcasting where he doesn't even it ain't even about doing radio stuff anymore because he is the voice of the Longhorns. He is known for just being the voice of the the voice of everything they do. That voice is
That's a cool name.
it's like they copyrighted and patented the voice, like his voice. People have told me women have told me his voice gives them orgasms. That's why. No, ladies told me that. I hosted a Mac Brown Women's Clinic and old lady came up to me. She was like, I love it, Craig. And she was like, I'm gonna say she was like in her late 40s. She's like, his voice gives me orgasm. And she was serious.
Totally bleeding that memory with Private Parts, the movie.
And I was like,
two and two
what? And
together.
she was like, his voice is so sexy. And I was like, I don't know, but that's good. That's great. So she apparently when he's like the Tower Orange and all that, she was getting her rocks off.
And he is
That's
dethroned
on that
really
note.
to the point when you look at the voice of the Longhorns, you don't even identify all the other voice of the Longhorns like Bill Schoening or the Ron Franklins or the old Verns, any of these
and they
old
were
guys
great. They
or
were
Brad
awesome.
Shams. They're talking about the Cowboys, the Spurs, all the biggest names.
Those guys were awesome.
Craig branded himself well now.
This is very true.
On that note, much love to Craig Way. We do have to get on with the show. This is Longhorn Blitz with Horns247.com.
That is like the Tower
We're talking about the voice of the Longhorns.
Exactly. That's a fitting intro to the show.
And Craig still has the intro. Craig did the intro for this podcast, so we love Craig.
We love Craig.
But we're gonna go ahead and get on to other matters. Before anybody, we are on Facebook Live today. Also, by the way, before anybody on the Facebook Live page says anything, yes, I am wearing a Wake Forest shirt.
No, we're not naked.
Please allow me to explain why I'm wearing a Wake Forest shirt. I have no attachment to Wake Forest. I didn't go to Wake Forest. Nobody I know went to Wake Forest. I just happened to see this shirt for like $10 on the clearance rack at Ross. It was my size.
What?
I love the Nike dry fits, so I bought it.
Well, in Texas?
Yeah.
Why was a Wake Forest like?
I don't know.
I don't even know Wake Forest
There's
apparel will even be sold
There's
in
a high
Texas.
school contingent, like the Westwood area. Like I know that there's some college kids that went to Wake Forest. It
I'm
seems
trying
to
to
be
think,
more
yes.
popular.
I just think
of
it's
the
a deal where
Southeast.
it randomly ended up at a Ross. So, and I just happened to be in Ross that day.
You know what?
Because that's
That
how
is
much?
random.
You remember how much you paid for it?
$10.
That's pretty good.
Because that's when I go golfing. I don't want to wear my good work shirts. I don't want to wear my work shirts
Wake
out.
Forest.
So I just find like the Nike or the Under Armour dry fits. at a
nice.
very, very discounted rate. I don't care what the logo is on it.
You look like you were like
it feels
be an ex-scout for Wake Forest or something.
I'm comfortable.
Or like you're an assistant
looks like you're on
coach
the
for Wake
golf
Forest.
team.
Yeah, I'm comfortable. So that's why. Not changing allegiances.
Do they have any other colleges, or was it just Wake Forest?
No, man.
Randomly?
You see random stuff like you see Iowa State shirts I've seen in there, West Virginia.
Interesting.
You might see like a random what was it? What's one Big Ten's going? Minnesota or Wisconsin.
How did Ross get that stuff? Like that's so
I
weird.
don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There you go. Maybe from the Ross. Is there a Ross up there? Do we know if Ross is? Now I'm asking way too. Now I'm way too interested in Ross. I apologize. Move on.
So
yeah, now I'm diving way too.
Just want to make
using my intellect for things that they don't matter.
We're trying to connect dots that probably don't connect.
We'll talk some Longhorn football today.
That's what we do.
We'll talk some Longhorn football today. We'll talk plenty of draft. We got to talk about Deontay Foreman here in just a second. We'll run down all that, but let me bring in the rest of the team. He is the master of the soundboard, the drop machine extraordinaire, the man behind the glass, the man, the myth, the legend. If it were not for him, well, we would have a podcast. It would just be terrible. Matt Butler, what's up?
I'm actually still thinking about Ross since you led us into that. But I was starting to connect those dots. Be like, how did they get here? It's a good question.
Is Ross going out of business? Like Payless? Like what's going on?
Yes. But yeah, no, you. I'm actually looking forward to seeing what y'all guys got to say about a couple things regarding the Longhorns.
Yeah, it's a lot of good meaty subjects out there about the Longhorns since the time that we last did the podcast. And I'm going to randomly bring them up throughout the show.
It was just straight up spring game last time, so we can encapsulate.
Yeah, Tom Herman has said some comments that got Longhorn fans a little fired up about the recruiting classes of Charlie Strong. I got a theory on that, so we'll get into that too. All right, anyway, sorry, continue.
He is the third member of our team. He is our lockdown corner here on the show. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I just saw Twitter. I just saw a meme of James Harden, so I'm sorry he's making a really like mad dog face. So
I saw that. The one at the press conference?
Yeah.
It's really good.
Sorry.
That's funny. It's really good.
I got distracted.
No, it's great.
He's a lifetime Longhorn, 2002 UT All-American, 2002 semifinalist for the Jim Thorpe Award, fourth round draft choice of the New York Giants in 2003. Spent his NFL career with the Giants, Lions, Bears, Bucks, Broncos, and he with the Hamilton Tiger Cats of the CFL. When he was done with football, got himself back to Austin, Texas, into 40 acres where he earned his degree. He wears his T ring proudly. Well, he would if he had one, but he'll make that happen.
He wore it proudly.
Nonetheless, he's a card-carrying member of DBU, number 21 in your program, number 1 in your hearts, Rod Babers. And Rod, the NFL draft starts in 2 days on April 27th.
I know, I'm excited.
What do you in the Rod Babers timeline of history? What does the date April 27th? What significance does it have to you, or should it have to you if you can't remember?
Should I remember April 27th? Was that the day I was drafted?
That, Rod, is the day that Ernie Accorsi and the New York Giants phoned you to let you know that you were the 123rd overall pick.
I should remember stuff like that. Draft. I do not remember that at all. Yeah, I don't remember the date that it was on.
I only knew the day because I looked it up on Google because I Googled it, put it in the Google machine, and found it on Wikipedia.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know if it was like today.
Like what day was the fourth round?
Around here.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Back then the fourth round. I guess it was on
fourth round was on a
Saturday because they did the first round.
No, I'm sorry, Sunday.
Yeah, it used to be
was it a Sunday?
Just a Saturday, Sunday draft.
Yeah, you're right.
It was a Sunday. 1 through 3 were on Saturday.
Okay, you're right.
4 through 7 on Sunday.
Okay.
I don't know, Rod, what you remember about draft day, what you remember about that weekend, but
I was just with the family, man.
Feel free to share with everybody what you do remember.
Yeah, I was just hanging out with the family. I remember watching the draft. I mean, it's a dreadful process, and I'm sure a dreaded process, I should say, for guys watching the draft, and especially for guys in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. The guys toward the end of the draft, 1st and 2nd round guys. I think you have a vibe, and you pretty much know if you're going to get drafted there. I knew that I was going to be anywhere from late, mid to late 3rd round to. Hell, you don't know. You could, at that point, anything could happen. You could drop to the 7th round. I knew I was going to get drafted. I was told that you will get drafted. We just think it'll be like after the 3rd round. You know what I mean? Somewhere around there. So I was like, all right, that's cool. I'm cool with that. And you get used to that. But you've been such a fan of college football. I'm sure you've been watching it. You have opponents that you've been playing that get drafted before you. So watching the draft, I don't even know if I'd recommend watching the draft if I was a player who's going to get drafted late. You can't help but do it. You're going to do it anyway. It's, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things. You're going to do it. You're going to end up watching it. But it is kind of, I will admit, I didn't enjoy the process of watching the draft. It was
retrospect, you would be like,
it was a little. It was a little. You know what I mean? It was just something I didn't enjoy. I thought I'd enjoy kind of watching and waiting, but I didn't. I should have just
high anxiety.
I
the
should
whole
have.
time.
Yeah, I should have had an activity planned during the draft and just had the phone ready. And back then, I mean, we're not as advanced in the cell phone era as we were back then, so I was still at home. And I think they had my home number in Houston because that's where I was at hanging out with the family. And they also had my cell phone number. And I believe I got the call on my cell phone number, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, the point is, like, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy watching the draft on draft day. I shouldn't have watched it. I should have did something else. You know what I mean? I should have had some activity planned and then just waited for the call. Because watching it, all you can think about is kind of the evaluation of other players or that you played with or may have played against and how you stacked up. You're like, man, I had a great game that game. That guy, I remember watching film of that guy. He wasn't that good. You know, you forget it. A lot of it's about, about the workouts and the projections and, the ceiling of a player and the potential of a player and the fits and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, you kind of take it personal when you shouldn't really take it that personal. Because it's the most impersonal process probably out there, period. Like, other than when they try to tear you apart if you have some off-the-field issues and tear apart your character, it's nothing about it that's personal at all.
And then looking at just how the draft was formatted back then with those first 3 on Saturday, then the last 4 on Sunday, where you were supposed to be, that would add to the anxiety that you were thinking you'd get into the third maybe, so you have the hope all day, but then when that doesn't happen, you have a whole night, and then you're thinking about it again, to where I could see how that anxiety would build without it wanting. I mean, there isn't much difference between being a 3rd or 4th round pick, but on the whole day to sleep on it when you were thinking about it could be.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going out to dinner on Saturday, and people were like, "Hey, man, you think it's gonna happen?" I'm like, "No, I don't think it's gonna happen. It's not tonight. That's why I'm hanging out." You know what I mean? They got my cell phone. If I get a call, great. But I remember Saturday, I didn't watch it. But Sunday, I actually sat down
and you were
watched
ready.
the whole thing.
Well, that's good. At least
dialed
you got first
in.
23 picks or so around there.
Yeah, so I didn't watch the whole thing on Saturday. I watched some of it. But it was, like, I don't know. I'd recommend, like, just taking your mind off of it. If they tell you you'll get drafted, you'll get drafted. But if you're in the later rounds, man, it's tough to sit around and watch the whole thing.
And that's why all the people, like, now that it's
the draft
parties,
man, I feel bad about the draft parties.
And then 2, 3, exactly the way it is now, because, I mean, the difference in a whole day, if you're the 29th pick or the 33rd pick, like, there isn't much difference, but that whole 24 hours of anxiety waiting and then maybe not going as high as you had wanted, you don't think about that as much until you have a Aaron Rodgers situation or something, and the guy's sitting there on TV just waiting and waiting.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of guys like to have parties. I'm against the party thing, man. Hang out with your family. If you want to do a family get together kind of thing, if you want to do a big party, do it. But man, I'd hang out with just the family and do it, because you just never know. I mean, those things are emotional. You never know. They kind of get emotional. You never know how emotional it's going to get, because it's one of those things that's unpredictable.
Let's talk about emotional for just a minute and talk about the draft. Somebody who will be drafted most likely on Friday, I think, in the second, third round range. Tough to see. I guess you could see a scenario where he falls to Saturday, but probably not.
I doubt that.
Is Deontay Foreman, the talented running back from Texas. And guys, he went ahead and revealed a secret that, I'll be honest, until a few days ago, I knew nothing about it. I was none the wiser. It was revealed that he had a son who was born the day before Texas played Cal. Was born premature, born at 23 weeks. His son, Deontay Jr., was diagnosed with an intestinal infection before Texas played Texas Tech. Deontay was told, and the family was told before the Tech game, that there was a good chance the baby might not make it. Deontay played anyway on that Saturday, November 5th against Tech. What's unquestionably the best game and the highlight of his season, 341 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had the 74-yard touchdown where he lost his shoe. Had what would have been maybe a Heisman-worthy moment, and maybe it would have been the touchdown where it's like 4th and whatever, and he bowls over the entire Tech defense and then just happens to get stripped right before he crosses the goal line. But unquestionably one of the best games for a running back in the history of the program, and does that all while his son is sick, and as he would later find out, his son passed away. Again, nobody knew any of this. This was not public knowledge. And I actually want to commend Charlie Strong and that staff, number one, because Rod, you know this, there was a lot of stuff going on behind the curtain that got out that probably wasn't meant to get out. And stuff tends to get out a lot. We saw this towards the end of Mac's tenure. Stuff tends to get out when things aren't going well.
Of course, people are disgruntled.
Yeah,
they're unhappy.
The allegiances aren't quite as tight as they were.
But for that to stay behind closed doors, that says a lot about, number one, first and foremost, about D'Onta Foreman and the kind of man he is, which he's a better man than I am. And from that standpoint, to deal with that and to be able to go play at the level he did, you can't even put into words what that is. That says a lot about D'Onta. That says a lot about his teammates and the guys that knew for not letting anything slip. And it says a lot about that coaching staff for making sure that, which, you know, I did talk to Deontay's dad, and that was something that D'Onta just didn't want it to become kind of this media circus, didn't want it to become, you know, a big deal. And you hate to use the word distraction for lack of a better term right now, but I'm on the fly, and I guess that's kind of what maybe you call, I don't know, but basically the bottom line is they didn't want it out, and D'Onta dealt with it in his own time, how he felt he needed to deal with it. It's coming out now. He sat down with Andrea Kramer, did the interview with the NFL Network, which was a very nicely produced package. But guys, we all deal with things in life and, you know, with work, and we all have personal issues and things that we go through, and we all have our ups and downs, but I can't even begin to fathom that whole process from start to finish, how you function day to day as a human being, let alone go out and do what he did on the field last year.
Yeah. I mean, well, we've seen these in sports. I mean, Isaiah Thomas actually recently lost his sister freak car accident for the Boston Celtics. You know, he's a fantastic point guard. He went out there and had an unbelievable performance. And I think he learned about it with like 48 hours and decided to play. I don't even know if it was that. I'm not sure about the details. But yeah, I mean, that and I think there was a shot of him crying on the bench before the game. Just kind of in some, you know, because you know, D'Onta Foreman has such a close relationship with the game. I mean, this is what it comes down to. I always say, you know, that it's your first love. It's about his relationship with the game. That's part of his grieving process. That was part of his mourning process. And it sometimes it's hard for people to understand that. Some people have kind of criticized athletes for doing that. I think it is, I'm with you. I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage to step out there and be that vulnerable emotionally and still go out on the field where, you know, you have to crystallize your focus. And I think for some guys that we've seen it, I think Brett Favre went through something like
his father died and had his best game of his career.
It almost allows them to crystallize their focus because the grief is so overwhelming that they want to get away from it for a while, and then maybe that focus that it takes to be out there, it's almost like, you know, I mean, we get into it that, you know, you coach something so much but that, you know, it becomes kind of muscle memory. And those guys can go out there and be passionate and have kind of a I would say a cathartic experience through the game. It's now I've never actually done that, and you know, honestly, I'm blessed to not have had to deal with the grieving process and also have to decide whether, you know, you want to play and you want to be there for your teammate. I mean, and like Isaiah Thomas for the Boston Celtics, D'Onta Foreman's the best player on that team. You know what I mean? He's going through that. So he's also, that's a family thing. His family there needs him. He's also got a family member that just passed. You know what I mean? Like don't get me started into how deep it is. I get chills kind of talking about it. And to then decide to go play in that locker room. And I don't know how many guys in that locker room knew about, how many guys he actually shared that within the locker room on his team. I'm sure he did a couple of guys. Obviously, his brother knew. You know what I mean? Like, so I wonder how many guys within their circle. I'm not think that's one of those things. I don't think you tell the whole locker room. I don't know how it went down. I'm just saying, I don't know if you tell the whole locker room. I'm sure Charlie and a couple of select. I don't even know about the coaches know about that. That's something that I bet Charlie and whatever the circle of trust that he has, that circle of trust knew. But still, man, that's heavy. That is heavy. That's heavy to play with, man. And so once again, I just admire Deontay Foreman even more so. We talked about the maturity of the young man. Maybe that's was kind of what we were seeing. We had the Longhorn Blitz with him, one of the best podcasts that we've ever done.
Yeah,
he sat in
easily.
here the whole time, and there was this maturity on this young man that we talked about. It was self-evident. It was, it was in your face. He does seem to be a little, I would say mature and experienced beyond these years, kind of an old soul.
Yep.
And that is his parents and his upbringing are a big part of it. But I believe that also experience, man, that's tough for a young man. He wasn't even 21, was he?
No, he just turned 21
Yeah,
yesterday.
man, that's
literally
a
his
lot.
birthday was yesterday.
That's a
and,
lot.
to be able to have
That's existential.
Exactly. And like you brought up the Isaiah Thomas thing, which is something like I believe it was just after the last game was the first time that Isaiah Thomas even spoke about it. And he echoed a lot of things that you just said about, there's no way to explain it, but it's the only way that in the moment, doing what I do, it was something that can be therapeutic and have a little cathartic. And you brought up, Armani Foreman being there with him, his brother, and it's sort of the same way that coincidentally Isaiah's good childhood friend from the same area of Washington was Avery Bradley. Avery Bradley was the one that came up and spoke to actually revealed the news to Isaiah at practice the day before that game one, and them two were real close friends. So just unbelievable to think about having to deal with those things while everything's going on. And then, you brought up him coming into the studio with us just a couple weeks ago, and we were amazed at how just Deontay so mature, outpouring, truthful, honest, everything that you love to see when you're just chatting with somebody. And it would seem like every single time that you hear about him or see something, it's one more thing that impresses me about him, and the fact that he could do all of this and be able to excel at the level he's doing and be able to also have those things. It just shows the ability to compartmentalize, yet also his human side, and he's not afraid to discuss it. And then like it sort of showed me too that like he knew at some point, being what the NFL is, a modern media, everybody around information age, there's no way this was going to continue to be a secret after the fact that he's drafted. And I think he just knew it was time to be able to at least disclose the info about what happened to lend context just more to himself as a person.
Yeah. No, it's and I mean, playing with grief like that and basically while you're in the mourning process has got to be. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine it. That's just something that's like almost unfathomable to be able to do that and also crystallize your focus to play the game at a high level, which he did. So, and I think he'll gain a lot of more respect too from in NFL front offices in terms of maturity. Looking at him,
I would think so. The only thing I want to add about this is it kind of puts it in perspective. And we cover college football, we cover this program, and you do have a job as a media member to analyze it and break it down, and sometimes that involves criticizing. And as a fan, it's okay to sit back and criticize and wonder why things are happening. But this is a reminder, Rod, that athletes, be it professional athletes, and we can debate how amateur college athletes are nowadays, college athletics. That's another topic for another day. But when you look at these people, you have to remember that they're just that. They're people. And college athletes have issues and things that come up in their lives just like the rest of us. So
helps humanize.
It's not to say that you can't criticize somebody or be upset that somebody fumbled or missed a block or what have you. But just remember, rational people should be able to have that filter in their brain that when you're about to take that comment over a certain line, when it becomes personal.
Yeah.
And you see that on message boards, on social media, you see it everywhere. And my only advice would be, in the midst of this Deontay Foreman thing, just think about that, in that if you are that upset about what's going on with the team, if you are that upset with a player, just remember, it's okay to be upset to a point, but when you want to cross that line, just remember, and this goes for professional athletes too, just remember, they are people with real problems.
Yeah. Everybody is.
Yeah.
That should be
a baseline.
I was going to say,
that's one
I
thing
mean,
that I think that in sports it does hit that reality. It took for me to become the same age as watching, like, because I was Vince Young's age. But like when you're young and you're looking up to players, there is the dehumanizing element. I mean, even being around you, Rod, like I'd never hung around an NFL guy until I got out of school and was around it, and it really did take just a few interactions to be like, these people are just normal people like you and I. They're your friends. They're everyday people. It's just that they were really good. Instead of being a computer nerd, they're a football nerd and grew up. So yeah, just if you can keep that human element and that rational baseline to go into it, really can help you just humanize everybody and think about, just put yourself in their shoes. It's like the golden rule. Do you treat others the way you like to be treated? Because they are actually like you, another human.
No, I think we do it on this show because we have had discussions where, let's take Tyrone Swoops, for example, correct? I think we all went out of our way in criticizing Tyrone Swoops to always go, he's a really good young man.
It's like Charlie Strong.
This thing is not perfect because we criticize Tyrone Swoops a lot.
He's a great guy.
All right, so yeah, Charlie Strong, same thing. Like, hey, we love Charlie Strong, but you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, exactly. So I think at least here on the Longhorn Blitz, we have tried to at least do it.
Yes.
I'm sure everybody, I'm guilty of it too. Trust me. I mean, I don't let me criticize like Rick Smith and the Houston Texans. I tear him apart. Like Rick Smith doesn't go home and have like a family that loves him and he's like a good guy. You know what I mean? I tear him apart for, oh, he's an idiot. Drop my quarterback.
This should be a true teller segment. Like, who have you wronged in your sports
takery?
I
mean? Yeah, I've done that. You know what I mean? And then so I think it's part of. I think they understand like it's part of the entertainment element of sports, and you really want people to be that crazy about it. That's the truth.
True.
Unless you're talking about Barry Trammell or Russell Westbrook, then you are delving into personal. But,
exactly. I was waiting on Russell Westbrook to go, you're fake news. You're fake news.
I just want to see Russell like at one point whole like lizard jump out of his mouth and he bites somebody.
And I don't
envelops them.
I don't know Barry Trammell all that well. I've met Barry a few times, covered Texas A&M games and things like that. Yeah. But it's one of those deals where Russell Westbrook was the guy, and I know we're getting way off subject, but Barry Trammell's the guy that Russell Westbrook once told him in a press conference. Barry Trammell said, "Russell, is everything okay?" And Russell Westbrook fired back, "Yeah, I just don't like you."
So it
Very
is.
truthful.
They got a history. Yeah, all right, that makes sense.
So,
but
no, much respect to the Foreman family. We have
hashtag Team Foreman.
Hashtag Team Foreman. That's what we're all about on this show.
Yeah.
So let's get on to the good news. I don't remember if you touched it or not because I'm doing 9 different things.
No,
over
go ahead,
here.
bro. I see you multitasking.
Deontay's girlfriend is pregnant. They are expecting a child.
Oh, nice.
And the due date for the baby.
Congratulations.
I don't know if anybody's seen the story, but I'm going to ruin it for you if you have. The baby's due date, September 16th.
The exact day.
It'll be Deontay Jr.'s birthday.
Wow.
1 year removed.
1 year to the date.
That is crazy.
Yeah. Yes. So
that is that's kind of freaky.
Oh yeah,
man.
it's them already being twins, and then he's
a
twin,
some
and then
freaky stuff going on.
Best
there,
of luck to Deontay and his girlfriend as they go along through this process.
Oh yeah, I mean they're about to be on the good foot. Trust me.
Yes.
Moving on up.
So let's talk about that. Deontay Foreman
they're about to be moving on up.
Rod, everything I'm reading, everything I'm hearing, gathering information from sources, what have you, leading up to the draft. I got a feeling Deontay Foreman's going somewhere on Friday. Maybe that probably early, late second, somewhere in that third round.
I agree with
and we've all seen this on draft, though. All it takes is one team or one pick or something. Not just that, for the draft to get completely screwed up and for everything you thought about the draft going in to be, all it takes is the Raiders taking Darius Hayward-Bay at 8 for everybody to have to just all of a sudden reset their board and reshuffle everything and revalue everything. I think the guy who I think is going to determine what happens with Deontay Foreman in this draft is another Big 12 player, and that's Joe Mixon. And I heard something. I heard some.
I'm picking up what you're
looking at some things online, and the team with Joe Mixon that I've heard kind of connected with him loosely, and this is just kind of the rumor and innuendo that gets thrown around during draft time, is the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles have the 14th pick in the first round, but the Eagles apparently really like Joe Mixon.
Yeah,
and the Eagles are worried if they wait to the second round. I think they pick 46th in the second round.
Then he'll be gone.
Overall, then he won't be there 46.
So there's talk of that. There's also talk that some, like 10 teams are taking him off the board too. Period.
You're hypothetical.
So either you love Joe Mixon or you don't give up about Joe Mixon.
And if those 10
I
teams
love Joe Mixon or Joe Mixon, man.
And while we continue this conversation, if those 10 teams do come off the board, mathematically speaking, it's going to affect what Jeff's talking about, that now there's only 20, so it's going to filter to even less guys that now narrow that down to the amount that need running backs.
Yeah.
And it really can affect where those few groupings, it's where if you have that run of a handful first, then they could devalue the bottom. Or if you have one that goes really high, it could throw off where the others are dispersed to go, as you brought up with Hayward Bay.
Yeah.
There's 3 running backs that I think everybody feels safely are going in the first round of this draft. That being Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, right?
Yeah.
Three backs pretty safely in the first round. Mixon really is the X factor here. And if he goes in the first round, then a team that might say, okay, when we need a running back, we can get Foreman in the 3rd round. We can use our 3rd round pick. But maybe that means they look at the board and say, man, if we really like him, he's not going to be here by the time we pick him the 3rd round. So either we got to trade up to get him or something's going to happen. So that's the kind of stuff that can happen on draft day that you got to pay attention to at your position.
But if Mixon goes in the first round, that's really good for Deontay Foreman.
Yes, it is, because that means he's going.
Yeah, that means he's going early,
probably in the
second
round. Yeah,
I don't think Joe Mixon's going to go in the first round.
Probably not.
I just don't think it's going to happen. Now, like you said, anything can happen in the draft, man. You got all these projections. Nobody knows what. Nobody knew Tim Tebow was going to get drafted in the first round. So they have no idea what these NFL teams are actually thinking, because most of that stuff is misinformation that we hear before the draft. But I will say this. I know some teams have Joe Mixon off their board, but when they originally graded out all the running backs, they had him as the 1st or the 2nd best running back in the draft.
Yeah.
So the teams, like I said, they love him. They love him. If a running back goes in the top 10, if any of these running backs go in the top 10, I think then you may see a run, because I think McCaffrey and I don't know if Dalvin Cook or Leonard Fournette's going to go first. We don't know. It depends on who they like. You know what I mean? But whichever one goes, I think McCaffrey's going to be somewhere in the middle. And then I think you may have a run on running backs then.
The other position,
the top 10 is the key.
The other position to look out for too, if you're Deontay Foreman, this is, I think, some things you want to happen. You want somebody to take a gamble on Joe Mixon early. That ups your value.
Yeah.
And if you're Deontay Foreman, you're Alvin Kamara, you're Samaje Perine, you're kind of that perceived 2nd-tier running backs. You want Joe Mixon gone early.
Yeah.
So that way,
I think Joe Mixon's going to go to a small market team. I think a small market team is thinking, all right, we could do it, because you don't have the media blowback that you would in a New York or
Raiders, Oakland.
That's going to Las Vegas. I don't know.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
You know what I mean? Like I think that's why Kansas City and the Tyreek Hill thing kind of worked out for them. You know, Kansas City's not. You know what I mean? Like
Tampa Bay, Rod. You've been in
that's
Tampa.
What I'm saying. I think Tampa would work.
Jacksonville, maybe.
I think you go, because I think you go to New York City or you go to
Philly,
Philly, Boston. Man, that's a lot of blowback. Right. They can play. All they're gonna do is play that reel over and over again, because hell, all they need is people to keep coming back.
Yeah.
They
on radio.
They need protests and stuff. That's just good for business. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's just my opinion.
And the big part about looking at Deontay and how he's factors, it's where that line of demarcation between that group you're speaking of, and if the other team's interested in Deontay, value him, like how Jeff said, you're that 2nd-tier guy. But is it, say, just you and Kamara and a big drop-off down? Or are you maybe a guy that is down near that group? Because that can show where the value is. Will he be picked 2 or 3, maybe 2nd or 3rd round, because they think there is that significant gap between the top tier and that next tier? Or is it going to be something where they think, well, after those 3, they're all about the same, which could devalue everybody down there at the bottom? So it's really going to come down to the case-by-case basis on those teams to see which one is affecting the other the most.
The other position to watch here for is quarterback. If you're Deontay Foreman, you want those quarterbacks gone as quickly as possible, because that's the less wheeling and dealing teams have to do at the back end of the 1st, in the early part of the 2nd, maybe even the middle of the 2nd round. So you want those I think you want those quarterbacks gone early. I think Rod, again, it's pretty safe that Deshaun Watson, Mitchell Trubisky, Deshaun Kaiser, Pat Mahomes. Am I leaving anybody out? Those are kind of the 4.
Those are top 4 right now.
You want those guys gone as early as possible, so that way when the board resets on day 2, that's what's interesting about the draft now, is you have the first round, and then you basically get 24 hours to kind of digest everything and reset your board.
And you get to make it some
big
deals.
For those teams.
You
really
want that board reset with the quarterbacks gone, so then they have to reprioritize everything and say, okay, hey, those quarterbacks are gone.
Yeah.
These number of running backs are gone.
Yeah.
Let's go best player available. All right, it's Foreman. Let's go ahead and take him. That could be somebody's, pick 2, 3, 4 picks into the 2nd round. You don't know how many teams. So basically, you want those quarterbacks, and you want those high-level running backs, that quote-unquote first-tier running backs. You want those guys gone as soon as possible.
It's a rare year for running backs, but running backs usually drop in the draft. That's just the way it's been over the last, I don't know, the trend of the last decade. But this is said to be one of the greatest running back drafts in the history of the NFL. I mean,
Right.
you know what I mean? So, I mean, no, it really is. I'm not just saying that to, just throwing it out there. That's what GMs are saying. So everybody's really excited about the running backs. It's been a lot of talk. Christian McCaffrey reportedly has been told he's going to be taken by, in the teens. But he won't last to the 20s. Like, he won't last. If that's the case, then there's going to be a running back taken ahead of him, maybe even 2. If he won't last to the 20s, because I think there's going to be a running back taken in the top 10, whether it be Fournette or Cook. Somebody's falling in love with one of those guys. Well, and I think Jacksonville is in that discussion that fall in love with one of those guys, too.
Carolina also.
Carolina, too. You know what I mean? So I think if that's the case, that's all good for Deontay Foreman. It really is.
Also, so
And
basically, put it all together what Rod's saying. If you want a chance to get a franchise running back, this is the year where you need to try to go get one.
This is kind of that year, yeah. And the old guys from the old regime, the best 2 running backs for the last decade, Jamal Charles and Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson just signed with the Saints. But Jamal Charles is still, I believe, still a free agent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That just shows there is a change, the guard. So, Ezekiel Elliott just coming in now is the best running back in the league. Got this rookie year. People are looking at that Dallas Cowboys. NFL's a copycat league. All right, so they see what the Cowboys doing now. Everybody's like, all right, damn, that looks good. I wonder what the Cowboys are doing. They got their franchise quarterback. They got a rookie running back all in the same year. I want that formula, even though they really can't do it. They can't replicate that. Kind of when the Seahawks did what they did, or when
the Colts did it with Edgerrin and
or
Peyton, or the Cowboys. I mean, you've always had that triplet
whatever
style.
the successful formula is. They're going to try to replicate it, even though that is usually that's a lost cause. It's a flawed philosophy.
Right.
But teams are going to try to do it. That's what the mobile quarterbacks, other kind of stuff.
That hasn't stopped teams from trying to make that mistake before.
Yes, and they're always going to do it. So in that vein, teams are going to want to get back to that running game, kind of like the Cowboys are doing, where they're dominating the line of scrimmage. That's good for all these running backs too, because now people are like, man, having Ezekiel Elliott, I think they got Alfred Morris. Like, man, I want a stable of really good, and I want a franchise running back. Now you're hearing that term, franchise running back. Franchise running back. What are you talking about? We got to the point where we had stable of running backs, and we didn't want to pay our running backs anything. Look at the Bill Belichick model, if you will. But now you see teams like Jerry Jones invested in the running back position. A top 5 pick in the running back position, and teams are like, you know what? Now I want to get one of those.
These things are cyclical. You've hit on it.
Yeah.
The shutdown corner is kind of going the way of the dodo bird now. Nobody believes in a shutdown.
But now the safety's popular.
Right. That's not to say that if you find a Champ Bailey or somebody like that you're not going to go try to get that guy. But it's not as much of a premium put on. It's like, well, we can get this guy. But yeah, you're right. If you can find that elite ball hawking safety, that's the guy you want. You want to invest more now. And that nickel corner, that slot corner position has become infinitely more valuable now than it was 5-10 years ago.
Look at the Cowboys. They let all their corners go. They got Orlando Scandrick and Byron Jones. Those are the 2 pieces they built around since we're talking Cowboys.
I want to give you props.
So
we don't talk a ton of NFL here, but this is the draft, and we kind of spring footballed out, and we'll talk Longhorn football here in just a second. But I want to give Rod props because, Rod, you were doing – I don't know how we both ended up doing a morning show one year. Here at the Zone, you weren't on that. You weren't on that shift, and
I think people were out.
I still have yet to be paid for anything I did for the Zone, but we both ended up in here, and the Cowboys had just given Orlando Scandrick a big extension, and I'm like, man, Rod, am I crazy? Like, why would you give that much money to basically a nickelback?
I remember that deal.
And Rod, you went in on. You're like, no, man, that's the way the game is going. Even at the NFL level, there is on that nickel position is valued. So if you've got a really good, 5-tool kind of guy that can play that nickel position, you better pay him like a number 1 corner.
Gotcha, man.
And it's turned out, man, Orlando Scandrick, when he's healthy, has been really, really good for that defense.
That's why the Honey Badger, man. That's why he's great. That guy plays both safety positions and covers the slot.
Yeah.
Holy Chicago, man. You know how tough that is to do?
Just shows you how much the game is.
And that's why the Jabril Peppers.
Kenny Vaccaro.
Jabril Peppers thing is interesting because he can play safety too and also cover the slot. I don't think he's a great cover man, but man, he has great balls. He's kind of reminds me of he's kind of got like a Quandre Diggs kind of kind of awareness, I should say, football awareness.
He's like a 6'1", 220 Quandre.
He is.
Basically.
He's like a more athletic, bigger Quandre than me, and I would take him. Like I think if Bill Belichick gets a hold of me, I'm gonna watch out.
That
man.
hybrid safety
scary.
linebacker.
Talk about
Pittsburgh Steelers, Arizona Cardinals, Patriots. Hell, even the Texans get a hold of Jabril Peppers, it'd be nasty.
Yeah, you're right.
You think about hybrid positions and where it's going. People now are starting to look for that hybrid. You want that hybrid linebacker
safety guy. He's perfect, man.
He can be depth at literally like 5 positions on the defense. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Speaking of position changes and whatnot, let's go ahead and talk about the rest of the Longhorns in this draft. Now, it's probable that Deontay Foreman is the only Longhorn who gets drafted.
I've been told he is the only Longhorn that's going to be drafted. No other Longhorn is going to be drafted.
There you go.
From what I've been told about several sources.
There's 2 guys who I think have a really good chance to make a roster. One is Kent Perkins, because I think at the end of the day, was Kent Perkins as good of a player as everybody probably thought he was going to be coming out of high school? Maybe not. Not all his fault. He had so many different offensive line coaches and schemes and just run down the – if you're an offensive player at Texas over the last 7 years, just run down the list of coordinators and position coaches and schemes.
I want to say you've had like 8 or 9 different, like since 2010, like 8 or 9 different OCs, like OCs or co-OCs.
Greg Davis,
Harsin,
Brian Harsin, Major Applewhite. Yeah. If you cut co-OC, you got to throw Darryl Wyatt in there.
And then you got to throw,
Then you mentioned
Stacey,
White, so then Joe Wickline, Sean Watson, Jay Norvell, Sterling Gilbert.
Dude, come on now.
You want to throw in Matt Maddox was a run game coordinator. Jeff Traylor was a passing game coordinator. Now you've got Tim Beck.
Come on, man.
That's 11.
You get
11 people involved with labels similar.
It's a lot.
That's a lot, man. It's a lot coming at you. So that's a lot of different philosophies.
But I think Kent Perkins is a guy, and Rob, we talked about this, man. Some NFL franchises want a guy that a guy you played for, Mike Shanahan, valued stuff like this. Where was the guy ranked out of high school? How good of a prospect was he?
He likes that
going into college.
What's the upside?
And
Does he have a high ceiling?
Kent Perkins was a consensus top 40 guy in the country, U.S. Army All-American.
Yeah.
Started what Kent Perkins ended up starting? I don't have my notes in front of me. I was 35, 40 game starter at Texas. Man, you got to be pretty good to start that many games at Texas on the offensive line. So I think Kent Perkins, if Donald Hawkins and Trey Hopkins are still on NFL rosters this long after they left the 40 acres, there's no doubt in my mind Kent Perkins has a chance to make a roster, to stick and carve out a nice little niche for himself in the NFL. The guy who, Deontay Foreman included, is the most intriguing guy in this draft process for Texas. The guy that I'm fascinated to see what happens with him is Tyrone Swoops.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, I talked about him after the pro day, and I still stand by it, man. The athleticism, and here's what we forget about Tyrone Swoops. He was a really good basketball player at one point in time in his career.
Yeah.
Like played in the same AAU games, same level AAU games as cats like Julius Randle and guys like that in that Dallas area.
His family heirloom,
So Tyrone's got
pretty good.
That's true.
And I saw him on the basketball court. This was so long ago. I want to say it was his junior year.
That's where the Vince Young comparison started.
I want to say it was his junior year when I saw him on the basketball court. And you could see not just the length, things that you look for like hand size, but the foot quickness, the lateral quickness was there at the time. Now, through, just the way Texas used him, they really like bulked him up and wanted to be more of a north-south guy, and that's where he was effective. But the work he put in at Michael Johnson Performance up in Dallas, getting ready for the draft, he's 247. He's a very lean 247. You see the hip flexibility. You see the lateral quickness. You see kind of that initial burst that he didn't play with at times at Texas. See the way he catches the ball. He's very natural with his hands. And I'm like, man, because Rod, tight end's still one of those positions where at the NFL level, you can still look for a developmental guy. The Cowboys drafted Rico Gathers last year.
Rico Gathers going to have a breakout year is what people are saying.
That just shows you the kind of, Jimmy Graham was a basketball player. Antonio Gates, undrafted free agent, as a basketball player. Blake Bell. That's a position where franchises are willing to take a chance. And you've got a guy like Tyrone Swoops. Was Tyrone Swoops the answer for Texas at quarterback? No, but if you look at the totality of his body of work and how productive he was, you say what you want to about the 18-wheeler package, and we know that kind of one of the tires got blown out on that deal, no fault of his own at times during his senior year. Man, when he ran that thing in 2015, that was the one thing until Deontay Foreman started to take off and got more carries. Imagine that. I wonder who saw that coming and called that.
Everybody.
But there was a time where the 18-wheeler was the one thing Texas could hang its hat on for a good chunk of that season, as this is one thing we do really well that we can count on.
Yeah.
Was that 18-wheeler package. So you've got a guy who at Texas was productive, played the quarterback position, knows kind of nuances of the passing game, understands the verbiage and things like that. And nobody's ever doubted Tyrone Swoop's work ethic. Nobody's ever doubted what kind of a guy he is. Nobody's ever doubted that he's gonna be good in the locker room. He's not gonna be a problem. Exactly, he's coachable. Man, Rod, if I'm a GM and I'm looking for a tight end, I at least, if I don't draft that guy in the 7th round, which if you're a team in need of a tight end, you might go ahead.
He might be a 7th round project.
We've seen weird stuff happen at the back end of the draft before.
This is one of the deepest tight. It's a really deep tight end draft, actually. Yeah, I mean, I know it's crazy for me. I just said that about running backs. So deep tight end draft. It's like a deep draft for tight ends, running backs, cornerbacks, defensive backs, actually, too. But I will say that I wouldn't be shocked if somebody took a 7th round flyer on Tyrone Swoopes just because they came and looked at him in person. And I don't know if he's had workouts but I saw him. So he did something on Fox Sports where they showed him working out. Like he's got somebody doing, I don't know, publicity for him, I should say, and they're doing a good job of it because he looks fluid. Like when he runs routes, when he did pro day stuff, he looks fluid. He kind of has a natural. He seems like a natural football player. Not saying he's a great quarterback, but look at the 18-wheeler package. He seems to know naturally how to get low. You know what I mean? You know he's not afraid of contact. You know he's physical. He's kind of a specimen. If you can just put him in the right position, leverage-wise, he should be able to block somebody. I'm sure they'll make him mean and light a fire on them. I mean, I'm with you. I think he's a great He might be behind Deontay Foreman, probably my second. I would say I'm probably most confident, I should say, that he's going to make a roster behind Deontay Foreman, who's going to end up getting drafted.
Yeah, and I really hadn't looked at his numbers
at tight end.
While you were talking about some of the other guys that were former basketball players, another guy that came to my mind when I just started thinking about body types is Julius Thomas. Whenever he came out, because he was a guy that played a tiny bit of college football but played basketball. He's another guy that switched over. But when you look, I just Googled his, workout times, and look at broad jump, Tyrone Swoopes better. You look at 3 cones, short shuttle, his times, they're about identical body type, and size is about identical. They're both 6'4", both came in at 246. It's like 6'4.5". So, I mean, you can see the body types is right there, and you look at some guys comparably.
He had better numbers than Blake Bell. He athletically had better numbers than Blake Bell physically. In terms of 40-yard dash time and vertical.
And the next thing,
Blake Bell was drafted in like the
4th round. We were talking about on the show a couple weeks ago.
Was it that high?
Yeah.
Blake freaking
and
Bell drafted that high?
I mean, he's really good at blocking, and then he's got into some of the past games. So, I mean, it'll all come down to his mentality. If he's a guy that really wants to block, be that type of guy, or if you just got great hands and have a massive, range to be able to catch a ball on another plane. If you have either of those skills, you'll make it. If you have both, you'll be real good.
Yeah, I think he's got a good shot. I think he's gonna at least be on the practice squad because he's a good looking project, man. He really is.
Yep. I think that's probably where the draft talk probably ends for the Longhorn crop. I think if you're Dylan Haynes, if you're a Sherrod Evans, somebody like that, a Paul Boyette.
You might see those guys go to Canada. You might see those guys sign some Canadian league contracts.
You're looking at going the undrafted free agent route and having to make it the hard way. Caleb Blewett's another guy like that. I've heard Caleb Blewett's had some interest from some NFL teams.
Really?
I don't want to say which teams, but I have heard that he's gotten some legitimate interest from a couple different AFC teams.
Now, I think some of these guys will listen when they bring in. I don't know how many guys will they bring in. Like initially, 100 and something guys they bring in initially for a training camp before they start making the 3 cuts down.
I know they're in the 70s for sure.
Yeah, well, maybe it's 90. I don't know. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe it's 90 guys they bring in initially, but they bring in every team brings in a ton of guys. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at University of Texas. I mean, a lot of these guys just on, kind of reputation of coaches and reputation, of the University of Texas. I think they'll get a shot in training camp. Think about training camps when you're that low on a totem pole and getting reps and getting a shot. You know what I mean? You get your few reps you got, and if you don't shine during those few reps and then the preseason, the 2 or 3 chances you get, then most likely if you were not drafted or one of their veterans, then you're out.
And you get 90 players heading into training camp.
Yeah. You know what? This draft just stings for me because I look at the top of the draft and 2 guys that are basically locks to go in the top 10. Jamal Adams and Solomon Thomas, guys that at one point in time while they were recruits were basically headed to Texas before all the
Is Solomon
instability
Thomas from
happened.
Texas too?
Solomon Thomas from Capel, yes.
Yeah, I mean it's not a shock. We've been talking about the and how the exodus, if you will.
But Texas led for both those guys at various points during their recruitments, and Solomon
I believe
Thomas.
Jamal Adams said he didn't pick Texas because of the uncertainty of Mac Brown.
There was more to it than that. Going back to Jamal Adams' recruitment, I think once he saw the writing on the wall, Texas was kind of out of it, and then Dwayne Aquina not being retained was kind of the last straw.
Yeah,
but I mean, he had family. Joker Phillips was family is one of the coaches at Florida at the time that was recruiting him, and I think LSU just presented at the time kind of a more stable situation. So a little more to it than that, but. Yeah, Texas.
Les Miles stability.
No,
Oddly, it's accurate.
At one point in time, I thought Jamal Adams was
stable than Texas at the time.
At one point in time, I thought Jamal Adams was going to Texas. At one point in time, I thought Solomon Thomas was going to Texas. And both those guys ended up having really good careers elsewhere, and are going to be top 10 picks. So, yeah, hopefully this is...
Texas will not win a national championship until you get guys like that to stay.
Right.
I think that's what it comes down to. Like really having, that's 2005 Texas, having Adams at safety and Thomas on the D line. Like that, I'm not making. That's literally how you had to get there. You have to be able to have those types of NFL caliber guys. And until then, and honestly, the reason the Big 12 hasn't been represented in a national title in a long time is because the Big 12 overall has not produced a ton of NFL caliber players. And a lot of that is because of the exodus of talent from Texas, because the biggest recruiting pool for the Big 12 is the state of Texas. It all is a vicious cycle coming back to eat itself, essentially. It's like the deteriorating, rotting flesh of the Big 12.
You can look at it, Rod. Though this is where it kind of started. If you go back to that 2014 recruiting cycle when Mac was out and Charlie Strong was in.
Yeah.
And I'll throw A&M in there because A&M is an SEC school. It's a different conference, so you're talking about guys going outside the Big 12.
It started there, but
Myles Garrett to A&M, Tony Brown to Alabama, Solomon Thomas to Stanford, Jamal Adams to LSU, Ed Paris to LSU, Nick Harvey to A&M. That's some of the top defensive talent in the state. Dylan Sumner Gardner to Boise State, Arion Springs to Oregon, Zach Whitley to UCLA. Otaro Alaka to A&M was committed to Texas at one point.
What's wrong with defense in the Big 12? The schemes suck. It's all a spread conference. Well, all those things may be true, but also there's not a lot of talented defenders. Yeah, there's not a lot of talented NFL caliber defenders in the Big 12 because they're all leaving to go to other conferences to play. Like, that's a big part of it, too. Imagine if half of those guys stayed in the Big 12, how much better defense in the Big 12 would be. Just half of them.
It reminds me exactly of the conversations we talked about why in the 90s.
Hey, you almost lost Malik.
Yeah, and Texas wasn't popular for the past 5 years in state, and it's just like in the 90s. You didn't have Texas popular for a long time. All the talent was leaving to other states. It's the same reason why Rod was being recruited by Colorado or Penn State and those type of things.
Florida State.
But it really took until a coach in the state was able to shore up the borders. And you hear this anywhere. If you look at any state that has just a affluent amount of talent, and it's what you do in Florida and Miami. But if you keep it in, it just needs the right guy to do it. Mac Brown could do it. Now you're hoping Tom Herman can do the same type of thing and keep that talent in state. But with those cycles, it sort of is that 20-year cycle.
Build a wall, Tom Herman.
Yeah,
figuratively, not literally. Like that, not like that, but build a wall.
Maybe a rebrand idea.
I don't know, just say like that. You know what I mean? Like just a wall around the state of Texas, much like Mac Brown did, a friendly wall.
Thankfully,
that allows all people of all colors.
We
and
need a Tom Brady moat.
Tom Herman has people in place that get paid to think of catchy slogans, right? So I'm sure they'll think of something creative.
Build a wall.
I don't think.
Where's the damn wall?
I don't think that's going to be happening.
You got two different groups trying to say two different things. Like, we're talking about the
I thought we were coming for Texas football.
Yeah, exactly.
No, man, we want the other one.
No, the other wall. Oh.
But I want to turn this recruiting discussion around to football, and we've got about 15 minutes left in this show. So I want to talk some Texas.
We can go a little longer than that.
I want to talk some Texas defense, if you guys would oblige. And I didn't know where we were going to go today. We could have talked quarterback, could have talked a number of different things. But Rod,
I want to talk some quarterback too.
Well, this kind of bleeds into what you wanted to bring up too with the recruiting stuff. And I don't know if you want to go ahead and look for those Tom Herman comments. I think I've got them pulled up here. I did a minute ago.
Oh, I don't have. We actually have
the sound from 790. I'll look and see. I know I just found them. If you guys give me just a second. Okay, I got that pulled up. I got the quote pulled up now. Sorry about that. But you go back and look at 2015, that recruiting cycle, that recruiting year, and those guys are now in a position where they're not young pups anymore. They should be your established veterans.
This is the Malik Jefferson class.
And if you look at the guys Texas got, and I'm just going to go by the 24/7 Sports composite rankings where these guys were, and the guys Texas brought in on defense in that class. Malik Jefferson was number 1, Anthony Wheeler number 11, Holton Hill number 13, Chris Boyd number 14. You go down a little bit further. Deshaun Elliott was a top 25 guy in the state. Just think about those guys right there, Rod. And those guys being the core of this defense. Malik Jefferson, Anthony Wheeler, Holton Hill, Chris Boyd, Deshaun Elliott.
Yeah, right there.
Consensus top 25 guys in the state. You got 5 guys. Now, Texas would have liked to have had some other guys in this class. They wanted Dalen Mack. They would have liked to have had Kendall Sheffield. There's some other guys defensive. Deontay Thompson was a safety at a West Orange start that they liked. But you look at these guys now that they're older. And all of those guys I mentioned, all 5 of those guys, ended spring football as starters. Breckenhayer had the shoulder issue, what have you. But Anthony Wheeler was getting some reps before that. So all 5 of those guys ended spring ball as starters on this defense. I don't want to oversimplify it at all, but if you get those 5 guys to get anywhere near their ceiling, you're going to have a really good defense at Texas this year.
I agree. And it's one of those things where we've been kind of waiting on every one of those guys to come close to reaching those expectations, even Malik.
I would say with the exception of Deshaun Elliott, just because he hasn't had as many chances.
This is true. I guess so. Okay. All right, we're still waiting then. But my point is we're waiting on all of them. None of them have come close to it. We're still waiting on them. This is supposed to be the breakout year, I'd imagine. Malik Jefferson has proven that he can, be an impact player. But obviously, it's still so inconsistent that last year at one point he had to be, benched. Even if they don't want to admit he had to be benched. You know what I mean? He came back. Benched. You know what I mean? But so my point is still very inconsistent. The baseline for these guys and their baseline standard of play is not yet developed. So that's what I want to see from this. This defense can be all over the place. From Todd Orlando's defense, I'd like to see more of a baseline, what I can expect on a week-to-week basis. You know what I mean? Hell, just from really honest, a consistency of starting lineups would be great. Last year, we got used to the point where we were rotating secondaries. Right? We didn't even have a starting lineup from week to week because we just didn't know based on the achievement level from the previous game. I'd like to see consistency to the point where the defensive coordinator has confidence in these number of guys, and those number of guys we can count on week to week based on the game plan and the matchup. Oh, I know how Malik's going to be used this week against this team, against this type of spread system. I know, they're going to play a lot of man-to-man because our corners match up really well here, and Holton Hill matches up there, and Deshaun Elliott's going to be placed here because we learn their skill sets and we learn how they play, and we know matchup-wise how Todd Orlando's going to use them. The familiarity with the system. Hell, last year, man, there was no familiarity with that damn system. As an analyst watching it, week to week, it was like, all right, they have to change everything because it was a complete disaster. So they changed up the personnel. I don't know how John Bunny's going to play this. I don't really know what they're playing here. They got to the point where, remember, Charlie Strong had simplified everything to about 3 or 4 coverages. And guys were wearing wristbands. And it was just like, all right, don't get beat deep. That's about go tackle somebody. Do those 2 things, and we'll call it a success. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we had gotten to. And I don't know, as a Longhorn fan, I think that was kind of the low point for Longhorn fans who were trying to break that from a defensive standpoint.
So I want to get to this quote about Rod that you brought up at the top of the show. And Matt, do we have this audio?
Yeah, I believe it's the one recently
from Sports Talk 790.
Yeah. The
proper gentleman of sports.
That's the name of the show.
Okay, go ahead and fire it off, Matt.
But when he was asked about the amount of talent that's
the question is in there too. The question is in it, and we can cut it off after his kind of smart Alec response. Did you already?
Well, and I got it leading up because it's a leading question. It really isn't a question. The guy's giving him a statement. He's like, "Oh, you got some guys that can play on this team," and this is how Tom Herman reacted.
Okay. If you say so, Lance. We've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I'm talking specifically those like Connor Williams. Look, I'm a big fan of Connor
maybe
Williams.
two or three, but
two or three guys.
I'm not sure that that's going to put us in Ohio State or Alabama category just quite yet.
Not even close.
Yeah, so we do, and Malik's got a lot of work to do, but he had a good spring from an effort and attitude standpoint. He's a smart football player. Got to get a ton strong. When we got here, Malik Jefferson bench pressed more than he squatted. So he's got some years of development that he's missed from a leg strength standpoint, and he's attacking this kind of summer off season very, very intensely. You're right about Connor Williams. We think he's the anchor there on the offensive line. I remember when I was at Ohio State, I recruited him very heavily, and he was one of the best offensive linemen in the country coming out of high school. But people often ask me the surprises, in my first 4 months, and one of them, to be honest with you, Lance, is that I'd heard about these back-to-back top 10 recruiting classes, and I was expected, or I was surprised that there's not as much depth here as would seem to be with two ballyhooed recruiting classes in back-to-back years, and so we've got a lot of work to do. The kids have bought in. They're extremely
All right, go ahead.
That's
Go ahead and cut it off from there, Matt.
So there you go. I mean, that's okay. Can I just say what I think is going on here?
Go ahead, Rod. Yeah. Do you want to bring this up, Rod? So
I think Tom Herman knows he's got to. I think Tom Herman's going to win 9 games. I truly do believe that.
This is the front end expectation.
So it's almost like when they're, and I got this idea from, because I was having the same discussion, because my take is that, Tom Herman, when he was at U of H, one of the storylines that developed, and he didn't really like it, but maybe it was a sports talk thing, or maybe it was a hot take thing, whatever, was that when he went 13-1 that first year, that he was doing it with Tony Levine's guys. Tony Levine prior to him went 8-5. He did not like that narrative at all. It really, really kind of bothered him that people thought, well, Tony Levine was going to do that anyway.
That's human nature.
That's just human nature, okay? And I think it's ridiculous, but it's huge. I think for coaches, they just don't really like that narrative. So I think they try to avoid it. It's so ridiculous because nobody is saying, man, Bob Stoops won them that national title because John Blake had him stopped. You know what I mean? Like nobody's like, dude, you gotta give it up to Ron Zook. He really, he really gave Urban Meyer his first national title. You know what I mean? Nobody's doing that. Like, in the NFL,
there's one outlier, Larry Coker, but that's it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, but for the most part, when Pete Carroll took over, nobody's giving it.
Oh man, Paul Hackett really laid the foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Like, nobody's saying that. So I don't know why they're paranoid about it, but I think they are. And I think for Tom Herman, he wants to make sure he controls this narrative that when I win 9 games and when I take this thing over and all these, I have like 8 guys make all Big 12, and everybody's like, Texas is gonna go to the Final Four in 2018. He's like, I want to make sure people are saying it's because of me, because also. And I'm not saying Tom Herman's keeping up with this, but Tom Herman's a really smart guy, and he understands promoting the brand, growing the brand and controlling the message, because he's kind of a CEO. He's got that Mac Brown mind. Right. Troy Strong's going to have a really good year at South Florida. I'm telling you that, okay? He's got a good young quarterback. Troy Strong's going to have a good year. He doesn't want a narrative coming back to Texas that he's winning with Charlie Strong's guys, and Charlie Strong's also winning. Charlie Strong's winning all over the place. He doesn't want that narrative. Right now, these guys suck. They suck, all right? They suck. You left me some trash, and I'm going to turn this trash into a treasure. So that's the narrative he wants to paint. And we all know Longhorn fans are educated. They're like, man, actually, there's a lot of talent on the 40 acres now. Now, if you ask Tom Herman, go look at those fat D linemen. And he's kind of a drill sergeant, right? So he's in drill sergeant mode. And these guys are also, this is part of his military psychology. These guys are in basic training. All right, when you're in basic training, you are trash. You are less than trash. All right, you are a despicable, horrible, terrible. I am going to break you down, tear you down, and build you back up into a killing, fighting machine. And that's what's going on here with Tom Herman. That's why the D linemen, they were fat and out of shape when he first got here. He doesn't give out compliments at all. You notice everything's a backhanded compliment. Remember when he was talking about PJ Locke and how he called his parents, like, I don't know if he can play though, but he's a good kid. You know what I mean?
Not
like,
satisfied.
Malik Jefferson, he's like, he needs to quit worrying about being so popular and worry about being a leader. You know what I mean? Even Chris Warren, he needs to learn how to lower his pads, and then one day he'll be a good player. You know, that nobody gets a glowing compliment from the drill sergeant, because this is basic training. All of you guys, all right, are lower than the low, and you have to depend on me
So what
to
you're saying
bring
is,
you to the promised land. It ain't that different what Donald Trump. Listen, every president does this, right? When you take over, there are some policies set in place from Obama that are going to benefit Donald Trump during this regime. But Donald Trump ain't gonna let you know that.
No.
Everything Obama did sucked.
Same
it was
with
terrible.
Obama to Bush.
Obama's terrible. Obama sucks. Now, when you end up getting, some tax advantages from the previous regime, Obama, Trump is gonna take the credit for it. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
All right. And Tom Herman's going to take the credit for some of what Charlie did. That doesn't mean that he's not going to lay a foundation and do a great job himself. But to paint the narrative, Donald Trump always has got to go, man, that Obama really screwed this country over. Guys, I got to pull us out of the hellhole we're in. Then I can start really making some headway in this country. That's just the way it works when there's a new regime.
Exactly. I mean, we heard Charlie Strong say it too. He's like, we ain't winning no national championships here. It's lower the expectations for the fans.
That's all he's doing.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. It's old. The way you say you under.
It's leader 101.
Right, yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Rally the
under
fan base.
promise.
You under promise, over
I'm
sell.
gonna do it.
Yeah, you
under promise, over deliver.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
But I mentioned this in I think it was my scatter shooting column last week. I actually like the way Tom Herman has presented this team because, and I'll go back to a comment he made, and it might have been an innocuous comment, and maybe it wasn't the finest piece I've ever written. Not that all of them are that great anyway, but I was kind of, one thing he said after the spring game really stood out to me, and he was talking about expectations. He said he really right now doesn't have any, but he said in general, and I'm going to paraphrase here, the expectation at a place like Texas is that you should be playing relevant football in November.
Yeah.
And I stewed on that for a while. I thought, that's actually one, very reasonable, and two, very achievable for this football team. Just play relevant football in November. Are you playing for something?
Hopefully,
maybe
baseline.
Look, keep in mind in the Big 12 this year, there's a championship game that's going to be played.
Good point.
Maybe Texas gets in the mix. That maybe in November you're like, hey, if they win a couple games, and I'll pull up the schedule. When you start looking at the schedule, maybe you can say, hey, maybe they go on a run. Maybe they can get in that 2 slot.
And it's a perfect.
Maybe they lose to Oklahoma in October, but maybe you get in that 2 slot. And say, hey, you get a rematch with OU at Jerry World, which, by the way, I loathe because now you're telling me that your marquee game in the Big 12, the Texas OU game, might not mean anything in the grand scheme of things. If Team A beats Team B in October, and then Team B wins the rematch for the Big 12 championship, then you're basically telling me that the first game just really didn't matter.
It's the
Colorado.
Right.
It's the Big 12.
It's the most Big 12 thing ever.
Exactly.
But I do like, and I think that, and maybe it's just where this fan base is right now. And I think this is I think gauging where your fan base is. Tom Herman understands that this fan base is hungry to win.
Mm-hmm.
3 straight seasons where you lose 21 games at Texas shouldn't happen. It's not to say you shouldn't have down years at Texas. You shouldn't have 3 straight 7-loss seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't happen. But he's not setting the bar extremely high. He's setting the bar at a reasonable place.
Yeah.
The flip side, Charlie Strong comes in, and you guys remember that coming on Strong tour he had, the tour stop in Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, you just referenced it where he told basically a whole room of boosters, we're not winning the national championship this year.
Get over it.
That's not something you just, and granted, he wasn't lying. He was telling the truth because we knew that team wasn't going to win the national championship. But it's the way you deliver it and the tone you set with the fan base, especially in your first few months on the job. And Rob, when we talk about having the collateral down the line, it's basically you're saying, okay, this is a total rebuild. That's basically what Charlie, whether he wanted to get that point across or not, that was the vibe we got. This is a total rebuild. It's going to be from the ground up, which by a certain point, you better start delivering. So it's like, okay, maybe give you a year, but you better start producing after that. Give you a year. you got to kick guys out of the program. You got to clean stuff up, whatever. We'll give you some time, but
yeah,
some point better start seeing a return on this investment. The return never came. Now Tom Herman takes over a program that's hungry to win, but it's unrealistic to think Texas is going to go from a 5-7 team to being in the college football playoff. But I think just setting that bar, and I'm probably gotten way off from where we're at, but I think setting that bar realistically, hey, just be in a position where you're playing relevant football in November. That's not a bad place at all for this program to be in year one under Tom Herman.
No, I think they're gonna. Like I said, I do. I think they're gonna have a good year. I think Tom Herman knows it too. They're gonna have a year that will exceed a lot of people's expectations. But he understands, how to control the narrative and how to kind of manage expectations. That's one of the things he's done really well since he's been here. And he's one. I will say this about Tom Herman: he gives you a lot of added value for being his head coach, something Charlie Strong didn't do. And this is it gets you I get you kind of points with the fans. All right, it gets you this favorability with the fans. And I call it added value because I don't know if it's something you have to do as a head coach, but you can argue Tom Herman's been the most active head coach in this offseason in terms of his social media presence, and just kind of random things that he's done, just keeping the brand relevant.
Yeah.
And that stuff, I know it's like small and it's like, oh, this thing's insignificant. Man, that's so Mac Brown, it's scary. You know what I mean?
New
Like
media ability.
yeah, like him giving out pizza to the fans and the fan day, and no, not a great attendance, but the little small, like even that demolition of the locker room.
Yep.
And even while he is also giving, even with the media, remember he had one, I think the first spring practice press conference, he goes for like an hour and a half. You know what I mean? John Bianca tried to get him to get up, and he's like, "Nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. I can stay here and do some more." You know what I mean? Like there are little things where he's gaining favor slowly but surely with people. Whether it's hanging out with the Undertaker or it's him tweeting to Migos or whatever. You know what I mean? There are little tiny things about controlling the brand, and not that Charlie needed to do those things. No, you need to win damn games. That's what matters at Texas. But Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Serena Williams, but it helps, man.
Relevancy.
That if you're not necessarily winning the games, and he's not winning games right now because he can't, all right? It's not there. He's doing those little things. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? It's the little things that count sometimes with the fans. And the fans have had a lot of access to him, even without necessarily watching him play or knowing a lot about his scheme and his culture already. Have you noticed? Am I the only one who noticed that?
No,
we're getting a lot of Herman. I'm like, well, I know a lot about Tom Herman already. He's been on the job, less than 9 months?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's working really hard to grow and construct the brand in like kind of his own image. You know what I mean?
Just look
And
at LHN. I've seen
Yeah.
so many new things that I'd never even seen before from the previous regimes. Or like you said, all the little things that he has when he's communicating with the fans.
He's
or
obsessed with
between
details. Small, you can
relating
tell.
or being cool.
Yeah,
Like everything
he's
in
running
between.
this program literally like every little part of it. Like you can
If
almost
think,
tell
though,
like
you
every
brought up
little part of
the
it.
element of Miss Sally and everything Sally was to Mac in the background. Like, I know I'm just throwing it out there, but I mean, the way that him and his wife seemed to appear as
Michelle.
that power couple as they came in and really had a plan and seemed as if their whole life had been mapped out in a way to where I just think he was so prepared waiting to do this. Like, there's a difference between having a job or having
there's
a
no question.
hobby that you
Yeah.
make it into your job, and he gets so much
Yeah.
out of it because I
Rod-
really think he loves doing these things.
Like
too.
Charlie
It's
needed a
challenge
tour.
to
You brought
Bill.
up the tour. Charlie needed a tour
Right.
to kind of present him. And Charlie was an outsider, to be honest, because he had
Yeah.
never spent that much time in Texas. Tom
So
Herman's
he
more
was
of
just
an
learning
insider.
those.
Yeah, so it took him longer, and see, Patterson,
Learning
who even
curve.
hired him, was kind of an outsider. Mike Perrin, who is a member of the family, and Tom Herman has kind of come in as kind of a member of the family. So I'm just saying, like, he's just done a lot to put out goodwill, or at least to earn goodwill from the fans, without necessarily even coaching a snap yet for Texas football.
But like we've seen, whether it's go back into the failed coaching tenures that we've seen, whether it's Paul Hackett at USC or Ron Zook at Florida or the guys between Lloyd Carr and Harbaugh at Michigan, Texas is a place where you don't get the luxury of you can't learn how to do the job
It's tough.
while you're here.
It's tough.
You have to be somewhere else and learn how to do the job. Rod, you and I talked about it because we talked to enough people behind the scenes. Tom Herman, he's not been waiting for a job. He's been waiting for this job.
Yep.
This wasn't just, oh, wow, I'm the head coach of Texas. No, Tom Herman has been planning for a very long time, waiting for not just any job, this job, this one right here, about 5 miles to the north of us, to get that job.
And to deploy
that's the job
his
he
plan,
wanted.
it looks like it's something that he's still on probably the first 5 to 10% of deploying plan A that I've worked and focused my whole life to get towards.
Yeah, he just
it goes back. Sorry,
that's
Rob,
why
but
it's interesting to see how it goes.
It's all in the way you brought this up. It's all in the way you present it, and always looking out for the brand. Because at this point, if you hear one Tom Herman radio interview, you hear them all.
Pretty much
the same. The buzzwords are the same.
Yeah,
and the talking points are the same. But it never sounds like, if this makes any sense, it never sounds like he's conducting the same interview. In other words, he's got a different way to present it. And if you look at the radio interviews he does, whether it's a station in Austin or a station in Dallas or a station in Houston, he'll throw in different tidbits within the same line of questioning that really make you feel like, okay, he is, whether he is or not, the impression is he's very invested for the 10 or 15 or 20 minutes or whatever that he's doing this interview to promote the brand and to get the word out about Texas football and to get this program back, at least where people view it in a positive light. That's one thing. And I don't want to turn this into a Bash Charlie session because that's not what this is about. But there were times I would talk to people that would go down to his coach's show when he had the coach's show at Pluckers. And they're like, man, Charlie, especially in 2015, like, Charlie just looks defeated, just looks so beaten down. And as the head coach at Texas, man, you can't present yourself like you're defeated, because when you're defeated, the fans are going to see you're defeated. And when the fans see you're defeated, it's not anger that sets in, man, it's empathy. And when empathy sets in, that means you've just got all kinds of cultural issues going on.
It's almost like it goes by osmosis to the fans in those situations.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think he's done a good job so far, considering he can't really go coach or win any games. He's earned a lot of goodwill with the fans. You can tell he knows how to manage and promote a brand. He has the CEO mind, and he's a guy he's willing to burst some bubbles. Like he burst the bubble of Longhorn fans about their facilities and telling them that your facilities are basically archaic. It's antiquated, man. This stuff ain't cool. Y'all think it's cool? It ain't cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think I give him props for that. He'll he burst some bubbles about the team, and even I would say even like some of the guys like Malik and Brecken and all those guys, he's willing to come in and say like, no, what you guys doing ain't working. That's not the way to go.
But that's why I said at the time Charlie Strong was hired, he was the kind of coach Texas needed for that time. And I still believe Charlie Strong, the way he approaches football, the way he approaches workouts, because guys in this program needed to learn how to work. It can no longer be the model that it was previously, where, Rod, you were in those Mad Dog workouts, and I've met Jeff Madden. I've talked to him. I respect him for what he's done in the industry and what he did at Texas. But it was kind of, a lot of guys will tell you, it was one of those programs that it was really there. If you want to make the most of it, it's there for you to make the most of it. But man, some guys just kind of just can go through the motions and skate by and just do just enough. And at times that's okay. That needed to change. And I felt like under Charlie Strong, that changed. But now Tom Herman, after 3 straight 7-loss seasons, you can come in and say, okay, what you guys were doing, clearly it wasn't good enough.
Yeah, total buy-in.
You didn't win enough games.
Get a total buy-in.
So let's go ahead and let's try it this way. And that gives you that clout to be able to say, well, I mean, yeah, it wasn't working. A lot of those guys on this roster haven't even been to a bowl game.
Yeah, almost all of them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could count, I don't know, maybe you need more than one hand to count the number of guys that have been to a bowl game. But, yeah, it's not that many guys that have been to a bowl game. At Texas, how about that at Texas? You're going to your junior year at Texas, you haven't been to a bowl game?
Yeah, and the bowl game is just a step in the process.
We're not even talking about like a New Year's 6.
Yeah.
We're talking about just a bowl game.
Just a bowl game. Yeah.
So
and that one bowl game was not a good one.
That's a big deal, but it's all in how you present the information. Tom Herman's presenting it in a very palatable manner right now. And this goes back, Rod, anytime you talk about, and I mentioned, the coaching transitions where it doesn't work. When you're going to hire a coach, one of the things you have to make sure you're getting with that guy, first and foremost, it's got to be, if it's not the most important thing, it's got to be number 2. Does this guy understand the culture of the place he's going?
Yeah.
And you see it all the time, man. If a coach doesn't work out at a certain place, it's probably because Rich Rodriguez in Michigan is a perfect example. Try to completely reinvent it. No, man. It turns out, as we're seeing with Jim Harbaugh, there's a certain way you got to do things at Michigan to be successful.
Agreed.
There's a certain way you got to conduct yourself. It just goes back to that, and the fact that we brought it up that this is the job Tom Herman wanted. He didn't want any job. He wanted this job. he understands this place. He knows this place. He knows. He might not know people, but he knows names. He knows people who know people. He knows who to go to. He's connected well enough. He understands Texas. He gets Texas. But Rod, again, kind of what you were talking about, the stuff that he's dinging within the program that he's having to make fans have realistic expectations of, kind of the wake-up call, it's good stuff. It's like, yeah, we got some talent, but the depth isn't where it needs to be. That's on Yancey McKnight and the assistant coaches and the offseason program to make that happen. And the facility's wake-up call was long overdue, because we sat here and talked about it. Man, prior to this renovation that's happening right now in Texas, Kansas has better football facilities than Texas does.
I know, and that Longhorn fans in the bubble that Longhorn fans are in, telling them that, it's like, no, they're like, what? No, that's not true. It's like, well, have you been to the Kansas facilities? Like, no. We're like, well, you wouldn't know. And then you connect that to recruiting. You're like, yeah, that is. I mean, every little bit counts in recruiting. And to 17-year-olds, having a shiny locker with a television above it, I know it shouldn't matter. Trust me, I've had to talk with 17-year-olds about, priorities and values and whether that should matter. But it does to a 17-year-old. It won't matter when they're 27 or almost 37 like me. You know what I mean? But it'll matter to a 17-year-old. And that's why Tom Herman was like, nope, we got to get the $10,000 lockers that look like they could be futuristic Terminators or something, like Transformers. Like, we got to get that because the kids like it. It's really cool to them, and it makes an impression on them. And we get to tweet it out, and that goes viral. And then everybody in the country does a story about it. You know who else does that? Jim Harbaugh does that. You know what I mean? Because it's called, you know who else does it? Jerry Jones. Because they're managing brands. And when you're managing a brand, ask Donald Trump about it. It's called free media. It's a new term. Go look it up. Free media. And free media is basically something, it's free publicity. It's free promotion, free marketing, free advertising. There's theories that Donald Trump won the election because of free media. Yeah. Because, Hillary Clinton and the Democrats paid for a lot of media. Hell, I just say something crazy and they'll come. They'll come running. I'll give them stories, and they will cover me for free. All of them around the world, they'll come cover me for hours upon hours if I just give them content. And what does Jim Harbaugh do? He climbs trees. He takes his shirt off. He goes and you know what I mean? People are like, that's crazy. No, it ain't, because there's a story about it on CBS Sports and on Fox Sports and on ESPN, and it's free media. He didn't pay for that, but everybody's going to cover it. And those recruits are going to see it because they're on Twitter. It's going to go viral. And Tom Herman understands that. How many times has Tom Herman gone viral since he's been here? Been like 4 or 5 times.
Even go back to U of H, getting the grill.
Yeah, whatever it is. So they understand, like, that's the best brand. Jerry Jones is probably the king of it. Because the Dallas Cowboys can be relevant, and everybody, they're still the most profitable and the most popular brand in American sport. Not American, in the NFL, I should say. The most
As a
popular
Cowboys
sport.
fan, it's frustrating when the off-field stuff doesn't match up with the on-field stuff. But yeah,
it doesn't matter. And that's what Tom Herman said. Even when Texas loses, they still should be a profitable, relevant brand. So it's called free media. I think he's brilliant at it. I think it's great. I mean, even the jab at Oklahoma, which are 2 quarterbacks you recruited, one Casey Thompson with ties to Oklahoma, and the other one who was a verbal commitment to Oklahoma. Longhorn fans love that. That's like killing 2 birds with 1 stone, man. And F you to Oklahoma and Bob Stoops, and getting yourself 2 quarterbacks, what you need.
Yeah, and the current quarterback's from Oklahoma family, oddly enough.
Yeah, he seems to can do no wrong right now.
When you brought
ain't playing
free
the
media,
game either.
I remember seeing a study that quantified what the Johnny Manziel factor in December of 2012 was. It was $30 million worth of free media that A&M got, and I don't think it's any coincidence that you saw all of the big recruits in the best recruiting years of A&M's history come right thereafter.
Yeah, real quick, Rod, you talk about the brand when Justin Watkins, the talented slot receiver from Florida, when he flipped from Florida State to Texas. This was Tom Herman's tweet. I thought this was brilliant. Look, Tom Herman's a smart guy.
He's a smart guy, man.
This is going to get a reaction.
He knows.
It said, #Revolution18 is off to a heck of a start with this playmaker's commitment. Just the tip of the spear for this special class.
There you go.
Man.
Hey, I'm telling you, he's really a spinning.
And you know what happened with that tweet? I blogged it.
There you go.
I wasn't the only one that blogged it. Everybody blogged it.
He already knows, man.
And we're all talking about Tom Herman at Texas.
Exactly. And we didn't do that as much with Charlie, because Charlie had a lot of work to do, but so does Tom Herman. But Tom Herman focuses on all the aspects, the macro, not just the micro.
Right. Matt, appreciate everything, man.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Hey, Matt, is there any fantasy stuff going on with the draft or no?
With the draft? No. Got to have games
idea.
to go on. There probably is, but not that I know.
But you're in full playoff basketball mode.
Oh, yeah.
correct?
It's been going off. Kevin Durant, God, last night that game was amazing watching Golden State.
Travis can't talk right now, but Travis, thanks for everything, sir.
You're the man, Travis.
Appreciate the effort.
Yes.
Rod, appreciate the time and the knowledge.
Anytime, brother.
Hey, happy anniversary this Thursday to the date of you being drafted by the National Football League.
I should celebrate. I have a Bud Light for that.
Real quick, I know we like to make fun of Rod's NFL career at his own expense, and Rod, you chip in, but you know what? That's something, in all seriousness, that's something nobody could ever take away from you, that your name was called by the National Football League and you were drafted.
I appreciate that, brother.
Very few are elite in the world at
Thank
what
God
they do.
for the New York Giants. Yeah, God bless them.
In that same draft, Tony Romo didn't get his name called.
That is true.
Nope.
But Rod B did.
Romo
I
was
know.
on the
How many
couch.
teams are like, I passed up on Tony Romo? Yeah, the Giants, you passed up on Romo for Rod B.
There's
I
a
wonder
Giants
where
fan.
he
There's a
was.
Giants fan going, we could have had Romo who we drafted. Like, who the heck is Roderick Babers from Texas? What happened to that guy?
Romo was probably just playing
We could have had
golf.
Romo. We could have had Brandon Lloyd.
That's true.
We could have had Asante Samuel.
All drafted after Rod B. Bo.
But they're probably up there saying, who's this Barbers character from Rob Barbers from Texas? Never heard about this guy. But no, enjoy it, Rod.
Hey,
enjoy
brother, I
it. Enjoy it
appreciate
anytime
it.
you can. Appreciate the time and the knowledge.
Anytime.
For Matt, for Rod, for Travis, for everybody at AM 1300 The Zone, AM1300thezone.com, where you can hear this podcast each and every week. And thanks to Matt, you get us on iTunes, TuneIn, SoundCloud, and any podcast app.
Yep, just type in Longhorn Blitz.
For the Zone family, for the Horns 24/7 family, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for downloading and listening, and we will catch you again on the next episode.
You've been listening to Longhorn Blitz with horns247.com. Remember,
down to
for
send
the
a couple
latest
quick
Longhorn
liners?
news 24/7, visit horns247.com.